much do we really know about the ecological impacts of sheep grazing in Iceland? There has been quite a lot of research about sheep grazing here. This is not very surprising given the relevance of the topic. However, most research in the past focused on sheep production and forage quality, and very little assessed the environmental consequences of grazing. Ongoing field experiments are focusing more and more on the ecology of sheep grazing as a fundamental plant-herbivore interaction that shapes Icelandic ecosystems. It is exciting times for grazing research in Iceland. Sheep farmers have recently signed an agreement with the government to set up a monitoring program for the environmental impacts of sheep grazing. To talk about this initiative, here is Bryndís Marteinsdóttir from the Soil Conservation Service of Iceland.
It is very exciting to see that the Farmers Association, the Soil Conservation Service, the Ministry of Industry and Innovation, and the Icelandic National Association of Sheep Farmers have come to an agreement to set up a monitoring program for the environmental impact of sheep grazing in Iceland. This program is so long overdue. We need to understand what the current land condition is and how to manage grazing resources in a way that does not compromise the future use of the rangelands. This is exactly what we want to achieve with this program. The aim is twofold. First, we want to assess changes over time in the vegetation and soil resources of Iceland. Second, we want to develop indicators of sustainable land use. For this project to be successful, it is critical that all parties involved are engaged and are able to talk to each other. It is therefore very important that we all agree in the questions being asked, the questions that will ultimately guide the monitoring program. Within this program, we will monitor land condition and rangeland health all over the country. Monitoring will be done on different spatial and temporal scales. We will get a frequent overview of the whole country using satellite images, and we will also target specific sites more closely. Accurate site measurements are costly and time-consuming, so they will only be done every 5 or 10 years. However, each year land users will contribute simple standardized observations on the target sites. By linking analysis at different scales, we will get an accurate picture of the state and changes in land condition. We will also build on ongoing research and, where needed, we will set up specific experiments to refine the monitoring program. This is a long-term program that will evolve as more information and techniques become available. This type of monitoring approach is called adaptive monitoring.
Current research efforts on the impacts of sheep grazing will let us refine our models and design experiments that can specifically address some of the knowledge gaps that we have identified. For example, with the University of Iceland and the Soil Conservation Service of Iceland, we set up a field experiment in 2016 to assess the impact of sheep grazing on rangelands. The experiment was established in 2 locations, within and outside the volcanic active zone. We established fences that prevent access to sheep, and we are now monitoring changes in plots with and without sheep grazing. By comparing the responses of plants and other ecosystem components, like soils or insects, within and outside the fenced areas, we will be able to assess the influence of removing sheep grazing. In addition, we are conducting this experiment in 2 habitats with contrasting vegetation cover, a well-vegetated heath and a sandy desert. These 2 habitats represent extreme situations in their susceptibility to soil erosion and include areas that sheep commonly use when they are grazing in the highlands. To talk about these experiments, we have Tara Mulloy, a graduate student at Simon Fraser University and the Agricultural University of Iceland.
Simply excluding sheep from grazing in the highlands and allowing the ecosystem to recover could take a long time. Therefore, we are also looking at potential management actions that could provide solutions within a shorter time period. This is being done with experimental fertilizer applications that test the combined effect of both fertilizers and sheep grazing on the productivity of the rangelands. Fertilizers are commonly used to restore degraded lands in Iceland because of their ability to stimulate quick vegetation growth. But in the rangelands, this vegetation growth could actually attract more sheep, thus counteracting the effectiveness of the fertilizers. In only a few growing seasons, these experiments can show the combined effect of both sheep grazing and fertilizer applications, providing a possible management solution to land degradation in the rangelands of Iceland.
These experiments allow us to target specific questions that can help advance our understanding of how the system works and ultimately how to manage it better. By coordinating research efforts within national programs, we can address some of the knowledge gaps more effectively. We can then use the modeling framework we presented earlier to see how this all fits together. Before human settlement in Iceland, we had a simpler model where transitions were relatively slow. Increasing numbers of sheep, a cooling climate, and wood cutting accelerated some of the transitions, leading in many cases to ecosystem degradation. However, reductions in grazing pressure and recent efforts in restoration and revegetation are reversing some of these trends. An ecological understanding of the system is key to designing sustainable management practices, but we cannot forget the economic and social aspects. In the next section, we will discuss some issues related to the sustainability of sheep grazing.